Let's begin by laying out a simple and undeniable biological truth. Different human populations have been evolving in isolation for tens of thousands of years. Some groups spent their evolutionary history in deserts, others in rainforests, others in frigid tundras, and still others in highly seasonal temperate zones. These environments didn't just shape superficial characteristics like skin color or nose shape. They shaped every trait relevant to survival, including how the brain works. Now, in modern society, it's become taboo to even ask whether human groups might have evolved different average mental traits. We're told that all populations are cognitively equal. We're told that all disparities in achievement, whether in wealth, crime rates, academic performance, or technological innovation, can be explained by racism, oppression, or poverty. But when we pause and look at the bigger picture, when we apply the same evolutionary logic that we use for every other species on Earth, that narrative starts to fall apart. Let's consider what we already know. Intelligence is not one single thing. It's a cluster of traits: analytical reasoning, spatial awareness, memory, verbal fluency, social perception, creativity, physical coordination, and so on. These traits are not all linked. A person can be gifted in one and weak in another, but together they determine how well a person can understand, adapt to, and shape their environment. We also know that intelligence is heritable. Twin studies, genome-wide association studies, and countless papers in behavioral genetics confirm that a significant portion of intelligence differences between individuals is explained by genes. This is not speculation, it's established science. Environment still matters, of course, but it doesn't overwrite biology. You can't take someone with a low genetic potential for IQ and expect them to score 130 on an IQ test just because you gave them books and good food. So let's apply this understanding to the human species. If different groups evolved in different environments for over 100,000 years, each group adapting to its unique ecological pressures, what's the likelihood that every single group evolved to have the exact same average levels of intelligence, the exact same balance of cognitive traits, the exact same behavioral instincts? The answer is almost zero. No evolutionary biologist would accept such a conclusion if we were talking about birds, dogs, or bears. It is only in humans, and only for political reasons, that people pretend evolution stopped at the neck. But we don't have to guess. We can look at the real world. Start with sports. Track and field events are dominated by people of West African descent. The 100-meter sprint finalists are almost always Africans. East Africans, especially Kenyans and Ethiopians, dominate long-distance running. Their physiology, lung capacity, leg structure, muscle fiber distribution, is simply better suited for endurance. These aren't racist observations, they're facts backed by physiology. Then look at music, rhythm, and improvisational verbal performance. Who dominates hip-hop, freestyle rap, and comedy? Again, overwhelmingly African individuals. These are areas that require fast verbal processing, social intuition, emotional timing, all aspects of a certain kind of social and creative intelligence. If this success were purely cultural, other groups could replicate it just as easily, but they don't. Now shift your focus to mathematics, technology, and scientific innovation. Who dominates Nobel Prizes in physics, mathematics, and economics? Who leads the academic fields in IQ-heavy disciplines? You find Ashkenazi Jews, a tiny population that consistently scores the highest on IQ tests. Then you have Northeast Asians, Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, who also score very highly on standardized cognitive tests, especially in spatial reasoning and mathematics. Europeans tend to fall slightly below Northeast Asians and Ashkenazi Jews, but still well above the global average. And at the bottom, consistently, across decades, across continents, you find sub-Saharan Africans. This is not a one-time result. It shows up in every major study, from the early 20th century to today. It shows up in Africa, in Europe, in the United States. Wherever you measure it, you get the same pattern. If intelligence was shaped entirely by environment, these differences wouldn't be so consistent. And if it was caused by racism, we'd expect all minorities to underperform. But they don't. Some outperform Europeans. The usual explanation given for Africa's underdevelopment is colonization. But this doesn't hold up. Look at China. Look at Russia. Look at Germany. All of them experienced horrific hardship in the last century: war, genocide, famine, colonization, and civil collapse. Yet all of them have emerged strong. China, despite the Cultural Revolution, British imperialism, and mass famine, is now the second most powerful country in the world. Germany was bombed to the ground and carved up by foreign powers. Russia lost over 20 million people in World War II alone. Or look at the Ashkenazi Jews. No group in history has been more relentlessly persecuted. Pogroms, exile, ghettos, and finally the Holocaust, where millions were exterminated. Yet today, Ashkenazi Jews are overrepresented in elite universities, in Nobel Prize counts, in tech innovation, and in finance. Compare that to Africa. Trillions of dollars in aid have been sent. Western nations have built infrastructure, sent doctors, canceled debt, trained military officers, and opened trade routes. And yet, when aid stops, countries collapse. Institutions are unstable, corruption is rampant, and even basic civil governance is a challenge. We are told that this is because Western companies are still exploiting them, but every nation must protect its own interests. If Africans can't form stable governments that prioritize their own people, then the fault is not with the companies. It's with the populations who keep electing or tolerating the same broken leadership. And when Western companies leave, someone else moves in, like the Chinese or the Russians. The problem remains. Let's also look at the United States. We're constantly told that African Americans underperform because of systemic racism. But how do we explain the fact that Indian Americans and Chinese Americans do far better than the national average? These groups are not Europeans. They are not privileged. Many come from poverty. Yet they excel because they carry with them high intelligence, strong family structures, and a cultural emphasis on achievement. Jews, again, outperform not only Africans and Hispanics, but also Europeans. Indian Americans have the highest median income of any ethnic group in the country. These facts destroy the argument that racism or discrimination are the root causes of inequality. We're told that discrimination is what holds Africans and Latinos back. But if that were true, how do we explain the fact that Jews, Indians, Chinese, all non-European minorities, outperform European Americans on average? If racism were the cause, all non-Europeans groups would underperform. But only some do. The real correlation, the one people are afraid to talk about, is IQ. Group average IQ correlates with income, educational attainment, crime rates, innovation, and almost every measure of success. And the IQ gap is not closing. Despite generations of affirmative action, education reform, welfare programs, and diversity initiatives. This is not an accident. It is a reflection of deep, biologically rooted differences. Now, to be clear, no one is saying that individuals should be judged by their group average. There are brilliant individuals of every race. There are also failures in every group. But when you analyze populations at scale, the way economists, demographers, and policymakers do, patterns emerge, and they cannot be ignored. So why is it that belief in racial cognitive equality is still dominant in media and academia? The answer is not scientific. It's emotional. It's rooted in guilt, specifically white guilt, and in a desire to avoid conflict, offense, and difficult conversations. It's easier to blame systemic racism than to acknowledge that evolution has shaped us in different ways. It's easier to say everyone is equal than to admit the truth. We are not. We are not all the same. Not physically, not culturally, not intellectually. Every animal species shows variation across subspecies. No one is surprised that border collies are smarter than bulldogs. No one is offended that thoroughbred racehorses run faster than ponies. But with humans, we're told to shut off our critical thinking and accept an ideological fairy tale, that every group is cognitively identical, and all disparities must be caused by injustice. This lie is doing real harm. Because if the problem is falsely identified, then the solution will never work. You can't engineer equality where none exists naturally. You can't legislate intelligence or force parity in outcomes. It's time to face reality, not with hatred, but with honesty. Different groups evolved differently. Evolution shaped our bodies, our minds, and our societies. And that means that equality, as we're told to believe in it, is a myth. A comforting myth, perhaps, but a myth nonetheless. If we want to build stable, effective societies, we need to accept human biodiversity. Not to discriminate, but to plan wisely. Not to demean others, but to stop punishing high-performing groups for their success, and stop making endless excuses for groups that consistently underperform. Truth must come before policy. Reality must come before ideology. Otherwise, we will continue pouring trillions of dollars into illusions and destroying our civilization in the process.